So today's exploration, settling down in sitting posture. Normally I take a while to scan through my body, find all the different places that interest me, and then settle in on one. But today this area in my chest really caught my attention immediately. I've been aware for a while that there's kind of a closed offness in my shoulders. My shoulders tend to be rolled in and hunched. My clavicles, my collarbones tend to be a bit closed off. And there's been several explorations recently where that's something I could have gone into more depth into, but chose other things. And today this really attracts my attention immediately. So rather than doing the full body scan, I'm just going to go with what lights up immediately. And as soon as I bring my awareness into my collarbones, it immediately connects to this point in the back of my ribs, the connection of third, fourth, and fifth ribs to the fifth, fourth, and fifth thoracic vertebra. And I go right there immediately, just checking out my neck a bit and seeing how that connects down into that location, which importantly is the back of the heart. So this area relates to intimacy, connection. Just gradually settling my attention down into that point in the back of my heart now, right here. And if I were just doing this for myself, I wouldn't have my hand there. I'm doing that just to show you the location there that I'm focused on. Settling in with more awareness. Gently arranging my head and neck to kind of point more awareness down into the back of my heart and those ribs, and gently arranging my chest and my ribs, bending slightly backwards to compress that area, which brings more attention into it. And you can see there's a little spike of emotion there as I start to settle down. Slight rotational, very tiny rotational movements to find the sweet spot of the highest intensity. A slight head rotation as well to, again, just really increase the emotional intensity, find that spot that's going to have the highest intensity, which is going to lead to the biggest change. Yeah, little peaks of intensity. And now that suddenly brought my awareness down to my spleen on the left-hand side of the body there. That was entirely unexpected. But whenever we make connections between two sites that are emotionally charged in this organic, natural way, that tends to lead to really good healing. So now I'm doing a slight side bending to the left to increase intensity in the spleen, slight bending of my head and my ribs. Bringing more attention to the spleen. So I've got these two locations going now, the back of the heart, which relates to love, intimacy, connection, and the spleen, which relates to disappointment. So now, mentally, in retrospect, it's starting to make sense. I had an emotional pain 10 months ago, I've talked about before, of that loss of relationship. Huge disappointment for me. And now I've got these two places connected. And I'm starting to process those emotions, which means they're going to start to release and heal. And I'm just now keeping the two places active in connection and aware of the relationship and the connection between the two. I've really got those two places connected. It's quite intense, you know, disappointment of loss of relationship. There doesn't have to be a huge cathartic external drama, but the internal emotion is quite intense, but just allowing it to be, allowing myself to feel it. And you can see from the way I've got my body arranged, I've also got most of my weight bearing down now through my left hip. And if you'd seen some of my earlier videos, I injured my left hip 9 days ago slightly, and I did some work on that, which connected into my left knee, which relates to trust in relationships. So it turns out with the work I've already done on my knee and the work I've already done last week in my left hip, I'm actually continuing work I initiated about 2 weeks ago, actually. So this is a kind of nice organic process unfolding of, I started with the knee, made some changes there, moved to the hip, made some changes there. And now, without me expecting or predicting it, this now relates to that opening of the shoulders, opening of the heart, processing this disappointment. And of course, the whole theme here, in the knee there's trust, in the hip there was trust, and now we've got disappointment and opening, the disappointment in the spleen and the loss in the heart. So I'm really doing this whole process over the course of a few weeks of healing a huge emotional pain in relationship. With 2020 hindsight, I wish I hadn't taken 10 months to start working on this, but there we have it. I'm working on it now. Slight rotation in the head, finding the most intense emotional connection I can, connecting those sites up of the spleen with the hip, trust, the heart connection. The spleen, when it's wounded emotionally, resonates with disappointment. When it's really free and at its most open, relates to a spiritual connection. So the spleen, when it's really open, is kind of a beautiful organ for openness, spiritual connection. And I noticed here that I've had my brow furrowed through this whole thing, my jaw a little tight, my eyes focused even though they're closed, all of which inhibit healing. So now that I've noticed that, I soften my brow, which relates, furrowed brow, judgment, soft brow, lack of judgment or acceptance, tight focused eyes, judgment, soft focused eyes, acceptance. So by shifting those, created more acceptance, which created a little peak in emotion and a much faster processing, a much faster release now. Really moving through. Hip, spleen, heart are all connected. And now there's a flow of emotion, disappointment from the spleen to the heart, which is now open. And the heart really is the most powerful organ for healing. So with an open heart and the disappointment flowing to the heart, things are really healing quite fast and very powerfully now. And a lot's shifted so that now I'm starting to use the neck rotations, use the body movements to just feel what's still there. Some stuff shifted, so I'm looking for what else there is by very, very slight rotations, very, very slight side bending, very, very slight flexion extension. But really a lot of old wounds flowing to the heart and just releasing and healing. And here's that point. Most of it's shifted. Most of what I want to process today is shifted. The intensity's dropping. My awareness is starting to gradually, just naturally organic, move out to the larger body motions. I have had things compressed to kind of focus my attention on the heart, focus my attention on the spleen. But now, kind of naturally and organically, I'm starting to notice that there's more ease of motion, there's less muscular tightness, there's more fluidity in the arrangement of my ribs and the muscles around the third, fourth, fifth ribs and their attachments to the third, fourth, fifth lumbar vertebra. But then quite organically, without thinking about it, I turn my hand over here, my left wrist, and open up my hand, which is a motion of inviting intimacy, inviting connection. Opening up the wrist is the first place we can either close or invite connection. My left wrist, connection with others, connection with women in particular. Real peak of intensity there. With a shift in my heart and my spleen, I can now start to consider opening up to greater intimacy, an initial spike, and then this kind of, with that invitation, my heart is really opening now. The lifting of the heart like that, really opening to intimacy and connection again. In a way, I'd say I've been close to for the last 10 months or so. And this opening of the body posture, opening of the chest, opening of the ribs, I could have done that movement before this exploration, but it would have been forced, tight, inauthentic. And now as I actually explore it with the awareness of the emotion, as I open, I notice there's some additional pains here, that there's a spike here, which is the 10th, 11th, 12th ribs in the back, which relate to forgiveness and acceptance. That processes and releases fairly quickly. And now I'm really feeling out those arrangements of the ribs, really opening them up. So it's not forcing a new physical arrangement of the muscles and bones, which is easy to force but doesn't change anything in consciousness, or at least very, very little. It's actually an authentic rearrangement of the large body structure, muscles and bones, to match a deeper internal change in the emotions that's happened. And when a change can happen that way from the deeper non-conscious emotions and arrangements of internal organs like the heart and spleen, and then that rearranges the external musculoskeletal, which we can arrange and organize consciously, but when we do it from an unconscious drive, that is the biggest shift, both in our internal state and then in our external behaviors. And incidentally, you can fake postures of being open-hearted and stuff, but people read it as inauthentic, whereas you actually, when we actually kind of adopt a posture of openness like this from a deeper change, people unconsciously recognize that and see it and experience it as a greater openness. So right now this is a slightly strange posture. I wouldn't walk around the street like this. But I imagine after this change, as I walk around in my everyday life, people are going to naturally and unconsciously just perceive me as being more open to connection. And more importantly, I'm going to experience myself as being more open to connection, more intimacy, and to invite more of that with other people. So I totally wasn't expecting this today, but I'm really excited for this change. And now I'm really done. I'm just exploring the big movements, and it just feels a lot more freedom of motion, a lot more fluidity, a lot more ease naturally coming from inside. And now I'm really done for the day. Beautiful shift. Can't wait to see how it plays out in life over the next few days and weeks.